Good, good. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to this worship service at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Bethany Russell Lowe and I have the honor of serving as minister of this congregation. Our community is striving to be as varied as the blooms of the Sonoran Desert, so whoever you are, whoever you've been, and whoever you are in the path to becoming, I invite you to bring your whole self, all of that here and now. We are a covenantal community here, which means that we make promises to each other about how we are together when we are together. And in this time of continuing pandemic, we are wearing masks while we are here in worship and in concurrent religious education. And our hope is that if you're joining us for in-person activities, you are vaccinated against COVID-19, as vaccinated as you can be. If you are unwilling to be vaccinated, you're welcome to join us activities. We just ask that you join us online when that is an option, and it is often an option. I extend a special welcome to any visitors this morning or people who've been coming back after a few years away. I invite you to fill out a guest information card if you want to stay in touch with us. For those of you who are joining us on YouTube, our administrator, Mary Leese, will post a link to the guest information card online in the chat right now. And if you're here with us in person, please join us for social hour, which is out the doors to your left and behind you and across the patio. There will be an alcove in that other building that says Welcome Center, and there you'll find clipboards and a friendly face to help you fill out that guest information card. And we will have social hour right after the service in Goddard, which is that space just out the doors to behind you and to your left. We will have coffee, tea, lemonade, and some snacks and good company there. And a few announcements before we get much further. The drumming circle is not meeting today because of Easter and all of the family festivities that surround this holiday for many. The drumming circle will also be postponed in May because that is Mother's Day on the second Sunday. But if you would like to join the drumming circle, second Sunday in June is your day to look forward to. Next Sunday in the afternoon at our sibling congregation, Mountain Vista UU, the UU musician Jim Scott will be putting on a free donation-based concert for us. He's an excellent musician. You'll recognize some of his songs. We've sung them recently. So if you want to go hear a UU musician and sing along with other Unitarian Universalists, Mountain Vista next Sunday at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. The concert's free, but donations will be gladly accepted to support that wonderful musician. And if you have been taking part in our Bible study with Mike Horn Mitchum, and if you'd like to join in, we won't meet today, but that will meet next Sunday after worship. So it's a UU Bible study. So it will be very Unitarian, informed by UU values and informed by critical reasoning. So if that intrigues you and you'd like to join that group, I've heard it's been really, really wonderful. And that will start meeting again after worship next Sunday. But as we continue our service, I invite you to turn to a neighbor, hopefully one you don't know well, and ask them to tell you about their favorite place they've ever traveled to. It could be near, could be far. Ask them to tell you about their favorite place they've ever traveled to. If you're joining us online, you're welcome to put your answers in the chat now. Thank you, Hung Yu. Our words for call to worship this morning come from my colleague, Reverend Ian Riddell. Come one and come all. Come with your missing pieces and your extra screws. Come with your hard edges and your soft spots. Come with your bowed heads and your upright spines. Come all you, flamboyant and drab, verbose and quiet, fidgety and lethargic. All you with large vision and tender hearts, and all you with small courage and tender fears. Bring your lisp and your stutter and your song. Bring your gravel and your drawl and your lilt. Bring your anger and your joy and your righteous indignation. Misfits and conformists and everyone in between, come into this space and be welcome. Bring who you are, bring where you've traveled, bring what you long for, and let us worship together.
Good morning. My name is Watercolor Golightly, and I'm your worship associate this morning. Please join me in saying our words of chalice lighting. They're by Dillman Baker Sorrells. For holy days on which we recall the old stories, we light the flame. For Passover, which reminds us of the courage and strength of those seeking freedom in the past, we light the flame. For Easter, which reminds us that love is our greatest challenge, we light the flame. For gathering today in our sacred place, we light this flame. For the opportunity to be together as a community, to remember the past, to plan for our future, to be alive in our present. For those of you at home, if you have a candle ready, please light it now as we do here in the sanctuary here in Holland.
And now, would you rise in body or spirit and join in singing, Bring Out the Festal Bread. The words will be on the screen and are also in the gray hymnals, which are in the back of the room always. Huh? The chorus. Bring out the festal bread and sing songs of freedom. Shout with the slaves who fled and sing songs of freedom. What modern pharaohs live in arrogance grounded, which shall be sent to challenge folly unbounded. Bring out the festal bread and sing songs of freedom. Shout with the slaves who fled and sing songs of freedom. Change still there are to break, their days are not finished. Metal or subtle made, they're still not diminished. Bring out the festal bread and sing songs of freedom. Shout with the slaves who fled and sing songs of freedom. Still does the resentment hide each brother and sister. Still do the plagues affect us red as the river. Bring out the festal bread and sing songs of freedom. Shout with the slaves who fled and sing songs of freedom. Long be our journeying, yet justice is worth it. Dance, Sister Miriam, and help us to birth it. Bring out the festal bread and sing songs of freedom. Shout with the slaves who fled and sing songs of freedom. O people, lift your heads and look to the mountain. Bushes of flame still call us, rocks still gush fountains. Bring out the Please be seated.
As many of you know, today is a holy day in the Jewish and the Christian and the Muslim calendars of the year. Muslims are in the middle of their holy month of Ramadan, where they fast and recenter in their faith. Christians around the world today are celebrating Easter. Some Christians are celebrating Easter today, the remembrance of the resurrection of the Messiah, who they call Jesus. And Jews are in the middle of their celebration of Passover, and we will hear about the Pesach Passover story this morning. At Passover Seders on nights this week, Jews have been using Haggadahs to tell the story that is the beginning of the book of Exodus, or Shemot in the Torah. Haggadahs are passed down from generation to generation through families of biological families and chosen families, communities, and they are changed and adapted as those communities change and adapt. This story is a summation of Exodus, the beginning of Exodus, from the Velveteen Rabbi's Haggadah. The Velveteen Rabbi also goes by Rabbi Rachel Barenblatt. Once upon a time, the Jewish people went into exile in the land of Egypt. During a famine, Jacob and his family fled to Egypt, where food was plentiful. His son, Joseph, had risen to a high position in Pharaoh's court, and the Israelites were well respected and well regarded, secure in the power structure of that time. Generations passed, and the Israelites remained in Egypt. In time, a new Pharaoh ascended to the throne. He found the Jewish people threatening and ordered them enslaved. In fear of rebellion, Pharaoh decreed that all Hebrew boy children be killed. 2 midwives, named Shifra and Puah, defied his orders, claiming that, quote, "the Hebrew women are so hardy, they give birth before we arrive." Through their courage, a boy survived, and Midrash tells us that he was radiant with light. Fearing for his safety, his family placed him in a basket, and he floated down the Nile. He was found and then adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, who named him Moshe. She hired his mother as his wet nurse. Thus, he survived to adulthood and was raised as the Prince of Egypt. Although a child of privilege, as he grew up, he became aware of the slaves who worked in the brickyards of his father. When he saw an overseer mistreat a slave, he struck the overseer and killed him. Fearing retribution, he set out across the Sinai alone. And there God spoke to him in a burning bush, which, though it flamed, could not be consumed. The voice called him to lead the Hebrew people to freedom. Moses argued with God, pleading inadequacy, but God disagreed. Sometimes our responsibilities choose us. Moses returned to Egypt and went to Pharaoh to argue the injustices of slavery. He gave Pharaoh a mandate which resounds through history. Some of you know it. "Let my people go." But Pharaoh refused, and Moses warned him that mighty God would strike the Egyptian people. These threats were not idle. 10 terrible plagues were unleashed upon the Egyptians. Only when his nation lay in ruins did Pharaoh agree to the liberation of the Jewish people. Fearful that Pharaoh would change his mind, the Jews fled immediately, not waiting for their dough to even rise. They did not leave Egypt alone. The text says that a mixed multitude went with them. From this, we learn that liberation is not for one group alone, but for all the nations of the earth. Pharaoh's army followed the Israelites to the Sea of Reeds, and they plunged into the waters. Only when they had gone as far as they could did the waters part for them. They mourned even now that Pharaoh's army drowned. Liberation is bittersweet because they died. To this day, Jews relive their liberation, that they may not become complacent, that they may always rejoice in their freedom. Oops.
Our earth is strong. It can hold our pain, our joy, our love, and our anger. Our shared bowl here, which we use for joys and sorrows each week, is strong enough to hold the big rocks, our collective celebrations and mourn. And also the smaller stones that we will be added to signify our individual joys and sorrows. Looking out at all the colors and flowers today that we are wearing and that are outside, I am joyful for spring. And looking at the news, I am grieving that there have been more mass shootings in the United States than there are days in this year. And that 14 of those were school shootings. So now it's your turn. Let us remember those desert people who came first to this place. We honor the Yavapai, the Tohono O'odham, the Yaqui, and the Hohokam, which is the Tohono O'odham word that means ancient people who no longer exist as tribal entities in Arizona. We who live in the desert know that water is life-sustaining, and it's a scarce resource. Water is life. Let us remember those who are walking through our desert right now without access to clean water. We pour water from a plastic jug, similar to the ones used by those seeking to assure greater access water to the desert, like our ministry partner, No More Deaths. If you have a joy or sorrow to share, I invite you to, if you're online, go to menti.com. The password is 32385609 today. And for those of you in the sanctuary, Brian Moon has Menti up on his device, and he can, if you would like your joy or sorrow read out loud for us all to share in today, he will help you with that. If you have a joy, and if you're in here in person, of course, we welcome you to come up to the table and choose the right rock for the joy or the sorrow and put it in our collective vessel.
We will read the mentee responses and then enter into a time of grounding and centering. AV team, I can't read that. Joy at the return of warm weather. We are enjoying the gentle weather today. This feels like a sorrow because of the division amongst people here in the United States, the war in Ukraine, and the violence committed against civilians and children around the world. Too much sorrow to carry. Gratitude for my loving UUCT family. Yes, gratitude for all of you. And sorrow for a sister-in-law whose life hangs by a thread after neglect and elder abuse. Sorrow for the dysfunction which enabled this to happen. Sending her prayers that she might be comforted at this tender time. I invite you now into a time of grounding and centering where I might ask your bodies to actually feel grounded. This might look like putting 2 feet solidly on the ground while sitting down or while standing up. The invitation's there. This might mean leaning back in that chair so your muscles and joints can really relax as much as they're willing to this morning. Or it could mean sinking into those seat bones and keep standing upright. It might mean putting your hands on your thighs, or it might mean finding a place where you can lie down. There's plenty of room here. Grounding might mean closing your eyes or averting your eyes downward or staring at some fixed object, something that will keep your vision stable. Once you have let your body be grounded, I invite your body to relax and do that by taking a few deep breaths. Now I invite you to place your 2 hands over your heart or your chest and consider the question, who am I? What is your name and where does it come from? What are different parts of your identity? What are your passions? What do you know to be true about yourself, about the world, about other people? Who are you? Take the answers that are swirling in your mind, and with a deep breath in and out, sink deeper into the ground of your being. And now I invite you to put a hand on the opposite arm as if you're giving yourself a hug, and ask yourself, where did I come from? Who are your people, biological and chosen family? Who are your ancestors? What did they teach you for better and worse? Where did you grow up? Where have you lived? How did those places, those lands raise you? Where did you come from? Take the answers swirling in your mind with a deep breath in and out. Sink deeper into the ground of your being. And now release your arms and extend them out somehow, perhaps in front of you or resting in your lap, whatever is most comfortable. And ask yourself, where am I going? What is ahead of you in life? What is your next right thing? What are your most pressing questions in this moment? What meaning are you seeking in your life? Where are you going? Take the answers swirling in your mind, and with a deep breath in and out, sink deeper into the ground of your being. With another deep breath, release if you are holding your hands out. Release to a comfortable or relaxed position. All our lives we are asking these questions: who am I? Where did I come from? And where am I going? And all our lives we are seeking deeper answers, unveiling new information, discovering new truths. May these few minutes be a reminder that it is good to ground ourselves, to give our minds and bodies time to remember these questions so that we may be guided forward in our life with intention and attention.
This next song has 4 lines, 4 sections that you'll see on the screen to my right. And I'm going to sing each, repeating each all the way through twice, and then linger a while on the first section. To know, each of these sections works with any other section. So as we sing through the song, if one speaks to you, linger there. And at the end, we'll all choose our own section and sing it for a while. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going?
Today's reading is Ready by Rabbi Rachel Barenblatt. And it starts with a quote from Exodus 12:34. So the people took their dough before it had leavened, their kneading bowls wrapped in their cloaks upon their shoulders. You'll need to travel light. Take what you carry, a book, a poem, a battered tin cup, your child strapped to your chest, clutching your necklace in one hot, possessive hand. So the dough isn't ready. So your heart isn't ready. You haven't said goodbye to the places where you hid as a child. To the friends who aren't interested in the journey. To the graves you've always tended. But if you wait until you feel fully ready, you may never take the leap at all. And infinity is calling you forth out of the birth canal and into the future's wide expanse. Learn to improvise flat cakes without yeast. Learn to read new alphabets. Wear God like a cloak and stride forward with confidence. You won't know where you're going, but you have the words of our sages, the songs of our mothers, the inspiration wrapped in your kneading bowl. Trust that what you carry will sustain you, and take the first step out the door.
If you want liberation, you have to travel into the unknown. This is one of the takeaways of the Pesach story, which Jews are remembering over Seder dinners this week. If you want to be really free, you have to leave home or the land or the way you have known and go wandering for a little while. Which is another way of saying, if you want to be free, you have to change. And we know that change can make us anxious, worry, fearful, and more. The unknown is scary, and for a lot of good reasons. Will the new place be more comfortable or safer or better at all? The possibilities can cause us to resist the journey. But what is the cost of waiting? For the Israelites, the cost of waiting became too great of a burden. They were enslaved. Their children's lives were in danger. The plagues came, so they went into the unknown together. And even though our circumstances might be different, we can apply the lessons of this story to our own lives today. We can use this story to inspire us to step or roll into the unknown, hoping, having faith that the wandering in that unknown will lead us towards our freedom. We each have an unknown in our lives, a path we have resisted, a gate, a door we have kept really closed, a possibility we have stayed distant from. Maybe your unknown is sobriety or self-forgiveness or a healthier relationship with your body. Maybe your unknown is that estrangement from someone who keeps hurting you and wondering whether there's any relationship there, or that relationship that dissolved, or that reaching out to the person who hurt you to restart that. Maybe your unknown is becoming more anti-racist, more anti-oppressive, or more connected, or that truer version of yourself. Whatever your unknown is, the Pesach story tells us that now is the time to open that gate, to start down the path of unknowing. The poet said in the reading to wear God like a cloak, meaning expansively make out of your deepest comfort a cloak to wrap around your being. Because you're right, the unknown, whatever it is for you, is really scary. There are a lot of good reasons you have been resisting the journey. And there's a reason that the unknown has stayed with you. There's a reason that the invitation is still known to you. You are not stuck in the place where you are. You are not stuck in a place that is distant from your liberation. You can leave, you can change, you can go. You will need comfort as you journey, so make a cloak out of that which gives you greatest comfort. And carry what you know. The poet reminds us that we might have to learn new ways of cooking, we might have to learn new languages, which are all metaphors, right? But she also reminds us that not everything will be new. We have our sacred texts, whatever they be for you, written on our hearts. And we have the songs that our parents and ancestors taught us in our minds. We have the knowledge of our culture woven into our hands. Sacred stories, songs, culture, these are things we carry without arms. They are things that remind us of our roots, of our humanness, of our inherent goodness. And like that cloak, they can be comforting on our journey as we move through the unknown. Why go into the unknown at all? For the Jews and for us, I believe the answer is the same: liberation. Liberation not just for you, for the new you, but liberation as a way to return to your truest self, your most human, most loving, most inherently good and worthy self. The Buddhist poet Mark Nepo once wrote, "There is nothing to do and nowhere to go, and accepting this, we can do anything and go anywhere." I take this to mean that if we can quiet our doing and quiet our going, we can begin to hear that call of the Spirit, the call of our faith, which runs throughout our lives. One of the calls of this faith, Unitarian Universalism, is collective liberation, which means simply that no one is free until everyone is free. So in those moments when we get quiet and just be, we can listen for that call that can help us get free collectively and individually. Now, if you've been sitting here thinking, there's no unknown for me, I have all I need, now might be a time to tune back in, because collective liberation requires all of us. There is no tuning out on this one, and none of us is there yet, because not all of us are there yet. So if you've been spending this time searching for an unknown in your life, I'd encourage you to consider the privilege of that position. Consider how the unknown for you might be to examine that privilege, to enter the unknown of feminism or anti-racism, of gender liberation, indigeneity, or more. Collective liberation means we all get free together, free from all of the oppressions of this world, and free from the oppressions of American culture, to name a few: that myth of individualism, the greed of capitalism, Christian nationalism, our addiction to guns and violence, the proliferation of white supremacy culture and colonialism. We could name some more. If we can quiet ourselves enough, if we can be bold enough to move into those unknowns, we could get free from all that binds us. And by getting ourselves free, we could get others free too. This is another takeaway from the Passover story, because Passover is just the beginning of Exodus, which tracks the journeying of the Israelites in the wilderness of the desert in search of their promised land. The sacred text says it took 40 years, which is not an accounting of time, but a metaphor for a long, long time, at least a generation. Meaning that very few, if anybody, who actually left Egypt gets to the promised land. Moshe didn't even set foot in Israel. When we remember the Pesach story, we remember the rest of the Exodus story too. When we remember the rest of the Exodus story, we realize that liberation is not about us. It's about our children, and our children's children, and their children, and their children, and so on. It's about all of us, not just some of us. Liberation requires community. Desmond Tutu reflected on this when he wrote, "Liberation is costly. Even after the Lord had delivered the Israelites from Egypt, they had to travel through the desert. They had to bear the responsibilities and the difficulties of freedom. There was starvation and thirst, and they kept complaining. They complained that their diet was monotonous. Most of them preferred the days of bondage in Egypt. We must remember that liberation is costly, and he continues, it needs unity. We must hold hands and refuse to be divided. We must be ready. Some of us will not see the day of our liberation physically, but those people who will have contributed to the struggle. Let us be united. Let us be filled with hope. Let us be those who respect one another. In this continuously and growingly divided country and world, you and I have heard strategy after strategy about how we can achieve unity, right? But how many strategies about unity ask us to go into the unknown together? So often, too often, we strive towards unity with things we know, things we think, things we believe, and ask others to simply join us in that. And look where that's gotten us. More divided, not less. If we are to get free, if we are to leave the bondages of oppression and greed and individualism, we need to be willing to travel in unknown lands in search of something we are unsure even exists, with faith that the journey will make us free. For those of us Unitarian Universalists who take up this journey, I offer us this. Inherent worthiness and dignity is our greatest comfort. Let's make that the cloak. You are inherently worthy and full of dignity. And if you can wrap that around yourself, you will begin to see that everyone else is inherently worthy and full of dignity too. And along the long road to our collective freedom, you might learn how to act as if you and everyone else is completely, inherently worthy and full of dignity. None of us will be free until all of us are free. So let freedom for all be our many generations long task.
What will you take with you today? Will it be the message, the music, the inspirational words? And can you leave a symbolic part of yourself? An offering of the willing will be accepted with love and reverence.
There comes a moment in a Passover Seder when celebrants might tell the story of Elijah, a prophet, a great prophet in the Hebrew scriptures. Our inspiration rabbi today, Rachel Rosenblatt, asks us to invite not just Elijah, but also prophet Miriam, who was Moses' sister, and some think is the one who put him in the basket to go down the river. Rabbi Berenblatt tells us their stories. 3,000 years ago, a farmer arose in the Middle East who challenged the ruling elite. His passionate advocacy for common people, Elijah created a legend that would inspire generations to come. Elijah declared that he would return once each generation in the guise of someone poor or oppressed, coming to people's doors to see how he would be treated. Thus, he would know whether or not humanity had become ready to participate in the dawn of the Messianic era. He is said to visit every cedar and sip from his cup of wine. Rabbi Berenblatt then invites us, encourages us to welcome the two prophets, not only Elijah, but also Miriam, Moses' sister. She was exiled in the desert with the people where there is so often no naturally occurring water. However, during their travels through the desert, the Jewish people were accompanied by a rock from which an abundant supply of water flowed. And this is called Miriam's well because it is because of her merit and her qualities that they had this rock and this supply of water. So Elijah then is a symbol of messianic redemption at the end of time, and Miriam, redemption of our present lives. So why welcome them both? We open our doors now to both with the need to act on both impulses, the drive for future heavenly land and the need to fix the terrors and the horrors that are happening here and now. So each Passover Seder, the community pours a cup of wine for Elijah and a cup of water for Miriam, and at the right moment, they go to the door and open it to see if Elijah has come, and every Seder he has not. Theologian Harvey Cox reflects that he feels that he comes to look forward to the opening of the door for Elijah, who is always a no-show. And I have come to believe that precisely by not appearing, the great prophet is showing us something we need to know. He asks, what does it mean that there is never anyone at the door? What does it mean? I ask us, what if we leave the door open to welcome Elijah and Miriam, not just today, but all year? What if we intentionally make space for their promises of justice and peace throughout our year? In certain kind of therapies, there's a therapy called open chair therapy, where you put a chair, you imagine somebody else or some aspect of yourself you need to talk to and have a dialogue with is in that chair. What if we imagine these qualities of Elijah and Miriam are in our open chair all the time? What if we talk to and talk for justice and peace? What would they tell us? What would they have for us? What would we learn? What would we ask? And what would we beg in return of them? How would we learn to welcome the beggar, the big truths of our lives when they come in the form of the oppressed and the dirty and the disheveled? Would we invite those parts of ourselves that we would rather not have? Would we act so as to bring about more justice and peace into the world? Maybe. And maybe in turn, we would be ready for when Elijah and Miriam arrive at our tables in the guise of the beggar, the poor, the dirty, and the disheveled. Who, maybe they would tell us that the power to bring justice and peace was within our hands all along. As we sang today, long is the journey, but well worth it.
Would you stand once again and lend your voice and song to the fire of commitment? Words will be on my screen, the screen over my shoulder. From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when they live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our conscience finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living brings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. For the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze. When our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, when our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice than white outrageous joys. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
Now, please join me in our words of chalice distinguishing from Reverend Deborah Hafner. Deborah Hafner. We are on a journey. We didn't plan it. We didn't have time for the bread to rise. We may find ourselves in the wilderness, hungry and thirsty, doubting that we should have ever come. But look around. We are not alone. It is our journey together, a journey to a better selves, a journey to a better world, a journey to be more promised land.